Number 10. Phone Guy. So we have talked about it on other animatronic theory lists before, but I think this one is the most likely based on the recording that we hear. Foxy could be the real animatronic behind Phone Guy's death in FNAF 1. The recording that we hear on night 4 starts off with Foxy pounding on the door, but while he might be locked out, we then hear the loss of power, which means the door would open again, allowing Foxy in. We hear Foxy's banging on the door abruptly interrupted as though he potentially fell through the doorway mid-bang as the door slid open. At the end of the recording, we also hear an animatronic screech, which could be the sound of Foxy jump scaring and killing Phone Guy. Number 9. Distraction. I have read some pretty cool theories on Foxy's game design and actual mechanics from FNAF 1 that seem to make sense, so I thought I'd share my overall findings here. That is that Foxy is just a distraction built into the game to make you lower your defenses to the other animatronics. In practice, this seems to be true. Foxy sprints towards you, which is honestly the most terrifying approach in comparison to the rest of the animatronics, but requires you to keep on checking up on him in Pirate Cove in order for you to avoid him doing so. Granted, Foxy can still end the game by jump scaring you, but it does seem like Scott Cawthon built him with these mechanics in mind in order to increase player paranoia and distraction, in order to make them more vulnerable to more slow-moving, less aggressive, and perhaps to some less intimidating animatronics. What do you think about his overall mechanical function in the first FNAF game? Mechanical function and design, I suppose. Number 8. Foxy is friend? This theory really doesn't have a leg or even a foxtail to hold it up, but it doesn't stop it from being popular among fans. In fact, it became so popular that Scott Cawthon himself at one point attempted to set Foxy's role straight, claiming that Foxy is not a friend but still a murderous animatronic, just like the rest of them. Foxy is definitely one of the most popular animatronics out there, which is likely why so many of us were ready for him to be a friend and not our enemy. However, the fact remains that although we might want to be friends with Foxy, we might want it a lot, he probably still just would want to do harm to us. So it's not gonna work out. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Foxy lists, which honestly Foxy I think is my favorite animatronic, so I would really love to give them to you, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 7. Checking in. A big part of the reason why people also wanted to believe that Foxy was one of the good guys, or namely the only good guy, was because of his behavior in the first Five Nights at Freddy's and the way it was perceived. Foxy is both seemingly shy and aggressive when it comes to his personality, as he hides behind his curtain in Pirate's Cove, but if not checked on enough will eventually stick his head out and then come sprinting towards you in the office. Those who are fans and who wanted to see Foxy as a good guy theorized that Foxy wasn't actually sprinting towards you to do you any harm in the game, but instead was just eagerly popping in to check on you. It was then theorized that you died from shock, you had a heart attack, due to the fact that Foxy is so eager that he sprints and can pop up in the office so quickly. Sad. So it was all a mistake killing. However, it's more likely that Foxy did come to do you harm and his jump scare is not well intentioned, but instead is just a regular murderous jump scare like all of the rest. Number 6. The Bite of 87. The Bite of 87 still seems to be a topic of debate amongst fans. At one point, one of the key suspects when it came to who did the biting was actually Foxy. But why Foxy? Well, the evidence for this wasn't super hard hitting. It was mainly because Foxy had some really sharp and bitey looking teeth. I guess also because he was out of order, and also because he kind of has a weird thing with his jaw. It's kind of like broken seemingly. But still, this isn't like a great amount of damning evidence. We know that the victim of the bite had part of their frontal lobe damaged, but did apparently survive the bite, at least initially. And a lot of people thought at first that Foxy and his razor-sharp teeth were the one to blame, which is potentially why his area is marked out of order, I guess, in that first game. If it's true. Number 5. The Protector. The alternative theory for Foxy being out of order in the first game, of course, comes with the idea that Foxy, once more, is a good animatronic. It doesn't actually intend to harm anyone. Instead, this theory suggests that Foxy is out of order not because he was behind the bite of 87, but because he tried to actually defend the victim of that bite. Defending the victim, however, put Foxy in direct conflict with the other animatronics who fought against and damaged him, which is why he and his area are closed off and out of order, because he's damaged. He's out of order. Of course, as we know, Foxy isn't really a friend, sadly, so this theory seems less likely in reality. But I do like the idea of it. Foxy standing up for and defending the children. It just gives us a nice alternative story to what is likely a much darker truth. Number 4, that's one bad fox. But actually though, I love how because people love Foxy so much, this can be considered a theory, even though it seems pretty concrete. If we're considering it a theory, it's a theory with a lot of compelling evidence, because Foxy repeatedly attempts to kill you in this game, jump scaring you in FNAF 2 whether or not you wear a Freddy head to try and disguise yourself. So he's not just a bad fox, but also apparently a smart one too, perhaps. There's tons of evidence to support that Foxy is in fact a cold-blooded killer, like the rest of the animatronics, based on his jump scares and the lack of proof to back up theories that he is actually just checking up on you or protecting you or coming in for a hug. Okay, so lack of evidence doesn't equal evidence. That's not how that works, but it does help to boost this pretty obvious theory based on the process of elimination. If he's not good and he's not neutral, he's gotta be a bad guy, right? Number 3, his enemies. Of course, some still claim that Foxy only attacks you both with or without a mask because he sees the other animatronics as his enemies. Someone so far as to claim that he was attempting to hug you when not in the mask and do harm to you while in the mask with his jump scare because the other animatronics and Foxy don't like each other and because they fought before. However, the animation for his jump scare in FNAF 2 kinda remains the same either way, implying that whatever he's trying to do, hug or harm, he's doing so consistently. It makes more sense to assume that he is therefore just attacking, which maybe does mean, however, that he would willingly attack you as well as an animatronic. It's either that, or he would hug both you and an animatronic, or he would attack you and he sees right through your disguise. He's just like, I see you in this head, but no. Which brings me to my next point. Number 2, smart fox. The other theory when it comes to why Foxy attacks you with or without the Freddy head in FNAF 2 was something I already alluded to, but I will more clearly define and expand upon here, which is that Foxy is a genius. Okay, well, maybe not a genius. I'm not sure if he's gonna be like splitting atoms or writing award-winning memoirs or anything like that, but he definitely could be one of the smartest, or smarter at least, animatronics out there. If it isn't that Foxy hates the animatronics and it isn't that he just wants to check in on you or give you a hug, it's likely that he just wants to do you harm, seeing you as a security guard and a threat, and he simply is aware somehow that it is just you in disguise and isn't going to fall for your trick. I guess Foxy sees that although you have Freddy's face, you do not have the bod to match. In other words, it's kind of a flawed disguise on our part, I guess. Like, you're just in your uniform, but you're wearing a Freddy head. He's like, I see the head, but I see that you're a human, and so you're dead. Number 1, Fritz. One of the most accepted theories when it comes to theories that are considered part of lore or fact is the one involving the spirits who possess the main cast of animatronics. In Foxy's case, this is Fritz. It's not really confirmed per se that Fritz is possessing Foxy, but it is heavily hinted at in the games, due to the order of tombstones we are shown being cross-referenced with the order of animatronic heads seen at the end of FNAF 3. And it is something that is more explicit in the FNAF book trilogy, where we actually get to meet Fritz, who is a victim of William Afton's and ends up being stuffed inside of the animatronic suits, causing him to possess Foxy following his death. So while the novel is perhaps not set in the same world, based on its story and the hints that we get in the games, combine those together and it seems very likely that whether or not the series of events was actually the same from the books, Fritz is still the one believed to be possessing Foxy. I mean, it's a theory, but it's also kind of, at this point, fact, I think is how a lot of people take it. Then again, there are a lot of theories that people take as facts that are not very factual yet, so yeah.
And at 10, Fredbear's Golden Freddy. One theory I've seen plenty of times, and I'm pretty sure is mostly because of FNAF 4, is that Golden Freddy and Fredbear are the same animatronic, suggesting that the reason Golden Freddy is all limp in the original FNAF and FNAF 2 is because his endoskeleton was removed after Crying Child's bite in 1983, and that's why the suit has to teleport around and cause hallucinations, because it can't actually, like, move. This would also probably mean that Crying Child was the one in the Golden Freddy suit. However, we know this isn't true based on the characters being separate in Ultimate Custom Night, and just coloring and size, since Golden Freddy is much smaller than Fredbear would be. I mean, at least I hope. Since Fredbear would also have to accommodate a human, and Golden Freddy wouldn't have to necessarily, since he would just be an animatronic and not a spring-locked suit. But then again, we don't know, cause this is FNAF. And at 9, Yendo. Yendo might initially appear to be just the endoskeleton of Funtime Freddy, but it's more likely that he's the endoskeleton of another version of Freddy that's not yet suited, as Yendo has a right hand where Funtime Freddy would normally have a bonbon attached, but I mean, like, he's able to swap out the hand and you know. Many believe that the name Yendo though, which seems to be a combo of yellow and endo, alludes to him being an endoskeleton of a golden variation of Funtime Freddy, or just the original Golden Freddy endoskeleton that was removed prior to the first and second game. But I mean, again, I don't think so. And at 8, it's me. There are only 2 people who have gotten this Easter egg to my knowledge, and it involves the Curse of Dreadbear DLC and completing a game to be taken to the victory screen. There in that barn you'll find 3 posters reminiscent of the ones from the alleyway and Pizzeria Simulator. However, this is where the ability to unlock this Easter egg is determined. You need to get 3 clown posters, which is incredibly rare. I mean, you can get 3 of any of the other ones, but not 3 clowns. Trust me. And cause like, I mean incredibly rare. Plus, then you need to hit them all with darts, which you only get 4 of, and if you miss 2 of them, you're boned. I've looked for this Easter egg for hours on both my personal channel during live streams and even on this one during a live stream from the previous lockdown, since I want to find this myself so I can prove to myself that it exists. Since if you manage to do this, the barn seemingly changes to a blacklight version, where the victory screen banner changes to read "It's me" and everything starts glowing because of a blacklight. YouTubers Johnny Blocks and apparently Daco are the only 2 to have gotten this Easter egg from what I've seen and what I've been told in the comments, but I haven't seen Daco actually get it. Not even MatPat was able to get this, and Eddie VR wasn't really trying. Some think that this is because Golden Freddy still has a hold on the FNAF world, and wherever Glitch Trap, or I guess William is, Golden Freddy will follow, because like Freddy and Foxy, they will chase after each other until the ends of reality. And at 7, the logbook. Some believe that there are 2 spirits possessing the security logbook, one of them being Golden Freddy and the other is the Crying Child. But I believe that these altered texts aren't another spirit, since it wouldn't really make much sense for 2 spirits to communicate in different ways, one using faded text and the other altering what was already in the book, and that seems very difficult. But I believe that these are hallucinations that we're seeing from Mike's perspective, but most believe the other spirit to be Golden Freddy. Why? Because they also believe that both spirits share the same animatronic. More on that later. But also, that's weird to me. Like, why would they both share the book, but also the animatronic? And why would they have to communicate through the book? Wouldn't they just be able to be like, yo, hey, this is me psychically communicating to you? And at 6, Phone Guy. We do hear Golden Freddy's jump scare at the end of the phone recording on night 4. We also hear Freddy's music implying that Phone Guy ran out of power. But is it possible that all the animatronics were present at this time and that Freddy therefore took part in killing Phone Guy? Cause like, if not, I would suggest that Golden Freddy at least didn't work alone. I mean, it would make sense with the 2 Freddys teaming up to take down the Phone Guy together, sharing their victory, I guess. But Golden Freddy being the culprit is also supported by the stuttering and murmuring we hear in the night 5 phone call, because that sounds an awful lot like the auditory hallucinations Golden Freddy causes us to experience throughout the nights. And come on, if anyone's going to kill Phone Guy, it's going to be Golden Freddy, let's just be honest. Phone Guy crashed a desktop. Halfway through in at number 5, emotions. Now, you see, Golden Freddy has a lot of powers, and frankly, we don't understand why. My theory, though, is that they're actually the different emotions that we can experience, because let's be honest, a suit that is able to transport itself through walls and through doors is just redonk. So I'm guessing that while also experiencing agony, Golden Freddy is hella angry, and that anger is definitely what causes it to crash our game, to make it say it's me, to just make us see all kinds of crazy shit. It has to be the other emotions. I mean, what other explanation could there be? Sure, maybe he's doing it to try to signify that he's our brother, but he has to be able to do it somehow. And other than other emotions, we don't know what else it could be. We've seen no other explanation. Scott hasn't given one to us, it hasn't been in the games, even Fazbear Frights hasn't explained it. All they've given us is that emotions can be powerful or they can be unpowerful, but agony lets us possess things. So if that is the case, then what would anger do? What would sadness do? What would happiness do? I mean, I doubt any dead kids are experiencing happiness, but I mean, hey, maybe they've figured out how cruel the world is and are now happy they don't have to pay rent. I don't know. Either way, It makes a lot of sense to me, and you know what, I'm gonna keep believing it until I'm proven otherwise. And at 4, the one you should not have killed. The one you should not have killed is, I guess, the main antagonist of Ultimate Custom Night. The character who most believe to be Cassidy is the one who's causing this whole situation, trapping William in his own mind while keeping him alive in order to torture him for his crimes. And while this may still be Cassidy, I think it could be Crying Child. I have a whole theory with my evidence as to why, so go check that out if you're interested. But no matter who it is, the one you should not have killed can't really be Golden Freddy from the looks. While the evidence certainly seems to point us in that direction, now we know that William isn't in hell or in purgatory in this game, but rather trapped in his own body, thanks to the story The Man in Room 1280 from the Fazbear Frights Book 5 Bunny Call. There is evidence in the form of the Stitch Wraith that multiple souls can possess one thing, however we have not seen evidence of characters being able to possess multiple big things at once. Cause like there was a character who, at least from what I've been told, was able to possess a lot of little things, but nobody has possessed 2 animatronics at the same time, let alone an animatronic and a person. In fact, in Bunny Call, William had to die for Andrew to be able to move on to the Stitch Wraith. So based on that evidence that we've seen, the one possessing William and the one keeping him alive, the one you should not have killed, can't be the one in Golden Freddy. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Crying Child. Some people believe that the one possessing Golden Freddy is Crying Child. This is mostly based on the It's Me hallucinations from FNAF 1 and the reveal that his older brother has been our player character over the first 6 games, excluding FNAF 4. So why would people believe this? Well, like I said, it would explain Golden Freddy's signature line of It's Me, since if we do play as Michael Afton in the first game, It's Me could just be the Crying Child trying to communicate with his older brother to tell him who he is. It could also explain the constant use of the phrase "It's me" in the security logbook, since some also believe it to be possessed by the spirit of Golden Freddy, or the 2 spirits inside the book are also those inside Golden Freddy. Which honestly, it makes no sense to me, because why would they be posing as multiple, why would they be possessing multiple things, like I said. Anyway, with the line of "It's me" being explained easily with Crying Child being Golden Freddy, it leads some to the conclusion that that must be what Scott intended, but let's be honest, it's never that easy. Penultimately, in at number 2, the 2-eye theory. The 2-eye theory states that in the FNAF 3 bad ending, that there are 2 eyes lit up in the head and the back, which we're guessing is Golden Freddy. I mean, it's confirmed in the Freddy files, but yeah. To show that there are 2 souls inside the suit. This actually can't be the case, and I'm gonna tell you why. Firstly, it would be more difficult to tell that it was an animatronic if only one of the eyes was lit, because like all we see are the eyes and like a little bit of the mouth, and it could very well just be the reflection of the light since it's so dark. I mean, you gotta take into account how light works. Notice how Freddy and the other animatronics also have light coming out of their other eyes. Secondly, Crying Child wasn't a thing yet in the games. Not coming until the next game, that wasn't even supposed to happen until the community was disappointed with the Springtrap jump scare, since this was supposed to be the end of the series that was confirmed by Scott in an interview. That's why we released the Souls in the Happiest Day minigame. Also notice that only one person wears a Golden Freddy mask in that minigame, and according to the official Freddy Files Updated Edition book, quote, "You'll see an image of broken animatronic heads, each with a lit eye," meaning that Golden Freddy in the back has only one eye lit. And I mean, like, considering how this is an official guidebook to the series, we gotta take it as law, right? Finally, in at number 1, Cassidy. Since the beginning of FNAF, we've been wondering about the mysterious and seemingly supernatural Golden Freddy, the entity able to travel through solid doors and walls, who gave us hallucinations and crashed our game when they got to us. Who was this mysterious thing? Over the years, we got a few names, but none of them were for Golden Freddy, most notably because of the gravestone ending in FNAF 6. But even with that, Golden Freddy's name was never given to us. Like, thanks, Scott. And if they are the one that you should not have killed, or if they aren't the one you shouldn't have killed, the name wasn't given to us in Ultimate Custom Night either. Like, come on. But alas, we were finally saved when the FNAF Survival Logbook came out, where after jumping through hoops, more hoops than Shaq has dunked on, we uncovered the name Cassidy. Thanks to Reddit user DPowerful1 taking various wrong numbers on different pages and making them coordinates in the word search, which I have to admit is still pretty weird because 8 and 11 at the end they weren't wrong numbers, they were just numbers that were there, but okay. And since the name Cassidy only appears in one other place, that being the 4th closet, the character doesn't really seem to mean much to the series. I mean, like, in that sense, like, the person who died to possess Golden Freddy doesn't really seem to matter, and that's kind of unfortunate. And at 10, Blank. Pointed out by Matt Patton of Fazbear Frights Theory video, the description of the Stitch Wraith given to us by the Fazbear Frights epilogue seems to resemble the character of Blank from the Five Nights at Candy series of fan games. And now with the Fazbear Fanverse initiative being confirmed and giving us another Five Nights at Candy's game, some fans think that this was actually meant to be intentional. Five Nights at Candy's is pretty much the centerpiece of the Fazbear Fanverse initiative, being the most popular and probably the best made game series in the group. So some believe that Scott either had the Fanverse in mind prior to its announcement last year, or that the Fanverse was a way of explaining the Stitch Wraith's appearance as a way to introduce the fan games into the main series, or as like a little Easter egg to show us that at least they have versions of the games in the main continuity. And at least until we get a full explanation, I'm still gonna believe that it's Blank, because that's cool. In at 9, Ennard. Or could the Stitch Wraith be Ennard? Well, basically, this has been confirmed as false since it seems the Stitch Wraith story takes place after the events of FNAF 6, where the rest of Ennard, now known as Molten Freddy, gets burned in the final fire, but perhaps the original intention was to have Ennard live on, as was implied by his minigame in FNAF VR. At the end of Ennard's vent repair, you activate a boiler that also causes something to scream. You assume that the thing screaming is Ennard, getting burned and turned into scrap. However, he jump scares you just moments after this scream. Was that seen to indicate that Ennard actually survived the fire like William did? Or was it just because we thought that we'd be safe after the scream, making that jump scare one of the most effective? Or is it because at the beginning, Ennard was going to play a bigger role than we suspected? And at 8, main villain. Could the Stitch Wraith become the next main villain of the series once William finally kicks that remnant-filled bucket? Is it possible that this creature powered by the intense agony of multiple individuals will be the next mission we see our characters on, until we can finally put an end to this nightmare? Actually, it's unclear, since to my knowledge the character hasn't really been introduced into the game series, so if they were to become the new main villain it would come out of nowhere, unless they get introduced via security breach or make an appearance in the Fazbear Fanverse initiative game like FNAF Plus for example, which also seems plausible. Because while he may always come back, I feel like the William Afton storyline is kinda running a bit dry. Like sure, we love to hate this guy, but without something new and fresh, especially with a new owner being introduced soon enough, we will most likely have to leave FNAF in the past. So something new is bound to be incoming. Like if every Elder Scrolls game had like the Daedric Lord Dagon as the antagonist, we wouldn't really have cared when it came to Skyrim. It's the same idea here. In at 7, Golden Freddy. The Stitch Wraith is also where the whole two souls theory started for Golden Freddy. Some believe that the Stitch Wraith is a representation of Golden Freddy, and that the Stitch Wraith's two souls mean that Golden Freddy has two souls. I mean, I don't know where that leap in logic came from, but it's widely accepted now despite there not really being much evidence for it, aside from circumstantial evidence that's built on other unconfirmed theories. But honestly though, that's most of the series at this point, having theories built off of other theories, but for some reason people never enjoy mine. Anyway, when it was revealed that the Stitch Wraith was able to have two souls inside him after the man in room 1280, this led to the conclusion that this must have been the case with Golden Freddy. Evidence being the Stitch Wraith, the survival logbook, and the 2-eye theory involving FNAF 3's bad ending, which I've already debunked. So yeah. And at 6, Afton Endo. Where did the Stitch Wraith's endoskeleton come from? It's a question nobody quite has the answer to, but I have a pretty insane theory that I absolutely love the idea of. At this point, I am convinced that Michael Afton was a robot at the time of Sister Location and maybe even before that. He may not have been a rebuilt Crying Child, but he was certainly a robot. So, since this endoskeleton seems to be an older model from the way it's described, could this endoskeleton be the one that was inside Mike for the games we were playing as him? It would make a lot of sense. That endoskeleton would be full of agony at that point, after being scooped and dealing with literally everything else in the series, and sure, Mike supposedly burns in FNAF 6, but that doesn't mean that the endoskeleton was destroyed, that just means that his remnant was. So an endoskeleton that had recently been possessed by agony sounds like the absolute perfect base for an animatronic that revolves around shifting agony. And if the skeleton did survive, which let's be honest it probably would, because I don't think a building catching on fire would be hot enough to melt the metal that was used for an endoskeleton, or at least an endoskeleton that was supposed to be for a human, and it already having agony inside it makes it seem like it would have an easier time accepting agony from other items later on. I'm just saying. It's probably not the case, but I mean like what a way to confirm that Mike was a robot, right? That would be cool. Halfway through in at number 5, good guy? Could the Stitch Wraith possibly be a good guy? This kind of switcheroo would definitely appear to be par for the course for FNAF. But having an animatronic we think is bad but actually be a hero might even be a little too far for FNAF. I mean, we've had good animatronics be revealed as evil before, that animatronic being Baby, but I mean, that's cause it's FNAF, of course they're gonna be bad. Could the Stitch Wraith though really be good after all? To my knowledge, he's only killed Dr. Phineas Taggart, who was his creator, who was a man that was messing with life and death and was very similar to William Afton in that way, bringing life to things that shouldn't have it, so it would be understandable if this agony-fueled beast was thinking that he was helping by getting rid of another man like that. He also just seems to be collecting parts that have already met their demise instead of really offing them himself. He collects that girl's limbs after Baby had already removed them and to be beautiful. He collects the Psycho plush trap after it was destroyed by a train. I mean, like, maybe this guy isn't so bad after all. You gotta remember that the animatronics aren't really the bad guys here. They just want justice to be served to their killer, even if they have to do it themselves. And if we do play as Mike, he does look like his dad, who was their killer, so their actions in my book are justified. If I was killed by someone and then came back, I'd sure as hell want to kill the guy who killed me if I got the chance. So yeah, I understand the animatronics. I sympathize with them. In it for new books. Other fans believe, or I guess hope, that the introduction of the Stitch Wraith will lead to the release of a new novel trilogy or series involving him as the main antagonist, which is something even I think is possible. The Stitch Wraith was introduced into the series by books, and the character has remained in the Fazbear Fright series aside from a few theories placing him elsewhere, so unless the Stitch Wraith shows up in Security Breach, it's entirely possible that the character will stay in the novels, with a new series or trilogy of maybe even exclusively graphic novels to keep the character alive. Because at this point, we don't really know this character's purpose or true intentions. They could secretly be a good guy for all we know, like I just mentioned. So maybe this new potential series of books would revolve around the Stitch Wraith being a force for good, or at least the protagonist, because the protagonist doesn't always have to be a good guy. Take Lolita for example. An incredibly messed up character is the protagonist of that book. But since he is the protagonist, you end up feeling sorry for him despite him being an absolutely awful human. That's also just because of the way it's written. It's like a literary thing. I couldn't read it, but I know someone who did. Getting close to the end in at number 3, the arm. The arm in the final seconds of the Security Breach gameplay trailer is one of the most controversial moments in FNAF history. Some swear it's William Afton, others swear it's the Stitch Wraith, since, like I've been saying, he hasn't yet been introduced into the games. I mean, this could be the perfect time to do so, since Afton's storyline could be on its last legs. But would that really make any sense? Earlier, I used the excuse of someone new taking over the IP as a reason to introduce a new villain, but the same could be said as a counter to that. If someone new comes in and changes the main antagonist of the IP, I'm sure plenty of people would riot. I'm even sure that some of you were thinking it or even commenting it after I suggested it. So could that arm really be the Stitch Wraith? It's a possibility, but I find it highly unlikely, especially because of the purple light that you can see reflected off the arm, since that color is definitely associated with William rather than the Stitch Wraith. And ultimately, in at number 2, Freddy and Friends. The recently released Freddy and Friends On Tour Episode 1 short on the Steel Wool Studios YouTube channel has some interesting moments to say the least. One of the most interesting being about 22 seconds in, when the screen glitches during a simple walking scene, revealing a face that could easily be described exactly like the Stitch Wraith was in the epilogues. To quote the wiki, the mask features are drawn on in thick black marker. It has 2 eyes, one of which is blackened. It sports a toothy grin with a missing tooth, and something appears to be stuck between its front teeth. It also appears to have blood around its mouth, but it is actually meant to be pizza sauce. While one of the eyes may not be blacked out, it certainly looks like this could be the real face of the Stitch Wraith, or at least how we would see it if it was in the real world, you know, like if it was actually realistic instead of a video game. And finally, in at number 1, William's Vessel. What if everything is right though? What if the arm is the Stitch Wraith's, but it also is William's? What if all the alluding that we've been seeing is right? What if the robot William will inevitably possess is actually the Stitch Wraith? In my breakdown for Freddy and Friends, I did mention that not even 1 second into the video we get a flash of purple. That combined with the seemingly random Stitch Wraith screen in that video 20 seconds later seems to indicate to me that the two may be related, which would honestly make so much sense, and probably it's going to end up being the best of both worlds for people who want to see the Stitch Wraith introduced and those who still want Afton to keep on kicking for a few more games. This entire thing seems like it could be building to that reveal, and that maybe William was the one who sent Phineas Taggart, the Stitch Wraith's creator, on a mission to discover what agony really does and how to control it. Maybe William needs the agony of the Stitch Wraith to help possess it and gain full control, since he's currently sentient code and we don't quite know how anything in the FNAF universe operates until it happens. Like those goddamn doors.